Tell me, what is your dream? The one that will leave you the most regret if you give it up. Well, the passenger we bought today in Sankofa also had one of that kind. He dreamed to discover the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. The problem is that he was not just anyone. He was for the last 2 years at the head of the powerful Mali Empire. This king is so little known in history that even his real name is uncertain. It is either Mansa Aboubakry II or Mansa Mohammed, depending on the translation from the Arabic sources. But whatever his name is, all sources agree on the fact that he abdicated in 1312 in order to realize his dream, leaving the power to Mansa Musa, one of the recent Sankofa passengers. So it all began in 1312 on the coast of the current Senegal and Gambia, when the sun rose on 2,000 boats ready to take the Atlantic Ocean in an incredible expedition, the second of this kind, which are the reason still today of a question that will surprise most of you. Who owns the discovery of America? Hello everyone, put your belts very well today because this flight of the Sankofa may shake some of your certainties.
African History Daily by my daddy.
Just the titles of works and articles devoted to this question of the origin of Mesoamerican civilization could fill in an entire library and could be divided into two sets. The first set, produced largely by Europeans, especially in the 19th and early 20th century, who wanted to prove that this civilization owed a rise to an original germ transmitted by migration, since Egypt, mother of civilization, therefore related to the glorious Western history. The second set was produced mostly by African Americans or African in the second half of the 20th century, wanting to believe almost the same thing, but with the premise that Egypt was a black civilization and the implication that the merit of having been the cradle of all civilization came to Africa. Eurocentrism against Afrocentrism, therefore, battle of ideologies that conceals a war of memory, a war that never reached the history programs taught in most schools in African countries. What a pity. Anyway, the Eurocentrists have believed to have definitely showed that such an expedition was practically impossible in the conditions of the region and at that time. One of them even concluded that such an idea would be placed to the martyrology of a maritime discovery. But as you can imagine, they only convinced those who were already asking to be so. Because after all, we know for sure that Viking discoverers arrived in America in the 11th century, before Christopher Columbus. So why couldn't African discoverers do the same thing? Yes, why would such hypothesis be irrelevant since Christopher Columbus himself noted that black merchants were already present on the American continent before he came? This being confirmed by the first Europeans who arrived on the continent, such as Lopez de Gomara and Pierre d'Anguera. Were those people really black? And is it for that reason that there is an Aztec deity called Quetzalcoatl, sometimes represented in Mexico as a black man with a bird? In addition to all this, the chemical analysis of the gold spikes discovered by Columbus on spears found in America showed that the gold probably came from West Africa. And I can go on to quote some disturbing comparative pairs, such as the Egyptian and Mexican pyramids, the Mayan glyphs and the rock painting on the Sahara, a monumental Olmec statue which is a pre-Aztec and Mayan civilization that traits of an African face, and so on. So, are you still skeptical? Then what if I told you about this crucial discovery, a mass of inscription engraved on a surface of about 5 kilometers on the coast of Uruguay? These inscriptions that you will find on the podcast website are similar to those found in Brazil and seem to indicate to the members of the expedition the best places to settle. According to Dr. Clyde Winter, an epigraphist from Earthman Institute in the US, those inscriptions seem to come from the Mandingo writing system, which was used by the expedition of the explorer king, whose history almost disappeared because the historian in Mali Empire who found his abdication shameful decided to conceal his history. So abdicating is shameful. And what about holding on to power? My African cliché of the day is a reproach to my history teacher, at whom I might be a little upset for not having printed in my head as a child the need, the power, and the importance of dreams and pursuing them. I'm convinced that talking to school children about their ancestors who renounced the wealth and prestige of a king to pursue his dream can only do good to them, especially at that young age. Would that prevent those school children, once they become head of state, from clinging to power? We will never know. Doubt, precisely. Doubt about history as written in colonization manuals. Doubt as a justification for revising school history curricula in Africa so that they can speak a little more of the broken and forgotten dreamers of the continent's history and a little less of George VI, Napoleon, and the Civil War in the US. As for me, I have no doubt that this flight makes you want to take action to realize the dream of seeing a teaching of history that serves the construction of an African citizenship beyond the colonial borders. And before I leave you today, let me share a quote that I cherish. Mind your dreams because they could come true. I look forward to our flight on Sankofa tomorrow. Thank you.